Kitty Hayes, welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you start us off by giving us your full name?
Okay, my name is Esther. I don't like May, but it's Esther May Hicks Hayes. And Kitty is a nickname.
I'm going to ask you about your name.
All right.
Each one of the names. Where did you get the Esther? And tell us why you don't like the May. And, and I'm very interested to hear where the Hicks connection comes in.
All right. Esther. It's a family name. However, my father was a minister, and he had 4 girls, and he named all of us biblical names. So Queen Esther. Also, my mother's mother, Esther, and I have cousins Esther. So it's twofold. It's a family name, yes. And then Daddy always named all his girls biblical names. May, why I don't like May, I guess so it sort of sounded country to me, I think, as a kid.
Okay,
I didn't
as a
like
kid,
it,
yeah.
right. Hicks is my maiden name.
I see.
Okay.
Which you retain.
And I don't use it.
Oh, you don't use it? Okay.
Don't. Now, Hayes is my,
Hicks is a famous Quaker family name on Long Island.
Yes, I understand, right? I see Hicks Nursery and Hicks.
Yeah.
So you never know. It could be.
Yes, exactly.
Way down since slavery days, maybe.
Where did the Kitty come from?
All right. In high school, there were about 5 girls. We went around together and still friends. We did not like our names, and we wanted to... I guess as high school girls will want to do, change the names.
Yes.
Their names, like Gwendolyn, you could say Gwen. Esther didn't lend itself to anything except like Essie or whatever. Nothing. It was hard. So it was hard to get a name. So I chose Kitty. I used to have a little kitty cat. My mother would say, every time I called Esther, here you come. Kitty, called the kitten. Here you come running with the kitten. So I said Kitty. And it's very interesting. That name did not take hold in Camden, New Jersey, where I grew up. When I went away to college, I introduced myself as Kitty. So from college days on, everybody calls me Kitty. When I go back home to Jersey, all my friends or family, Esther. I'm Esther.
Yeah.
So
that's not unusual, though. I think a lot of people have several identities that evolve as they grow. What's your present family situation, Kitty?
All right. I am divorced, and my sons, I have 2 sons, they are away. They married, finished college, and went away. One's in California, and one's in North Carolina. So I have nice places to visit. So I'm alone by myself.
What are your sons' names?
There's Donald. The oldest one is Donald Hayes II. And he has 2 wonderful children. My grandson is a freshman in college now. And my granddaughter always wanted a girl, so I finally have a granddaughter. Ginger will be 15 next week. And
the other children's names, the other grandchildren's names?
It's 2. Donald Hayes III and Ginger.
Okay.
Esther Hayes, they've named her after me. So that's the 2 I have. And my youngest son, Craig, is in California, Los Angeles. He was just married in France last year, and he's an editor.
To a French citizen?
She is now an American citizen. Yes, they are both in the film industry, and that's how they met.
You had mentioned before, we were talking about the editor component. That's what he does in the film industry.
Yes, he went to Ithaca and majored in cinematography.
Very interesting.
He has, I've been to see maybe about 5 films that I see his name on the screen.
Really?
Craig Hayes, A Rage in Harlem, To Die For, Unlawful Entry, Sliver.
Fabulous.
The latest one wasn't too swift, but was it Eddie Murphy's Holy Man? And my daughter-in-law Brigitte.
Did they meet? They met there.
And that's right. And doing editing. She's an editor also.
She is also.
Right.
What are the recognizable traits or characteristics, I just have to ask you this, that you see in the grandchildren or even with your sons that you know are family qualities or family talents or abilities that you've seen before?
Well, my oldest son, Don, he's a bit of the theatrics also, I guess, from his mama. They are, well, I don't know, he's a devoted family man. He has a wonderful wife, Gloria. It's just my daughter, I call her. I'm fortunate to have two wonderful daughters-in-law. Yes, Gloria. I've always wanted daughters.
So the boys have made good choices.
Yes, yes.
They'll be happy to hear that, by the way, when they see this.
She knows. When she went on vacation, she works in a bank, Gloria, a supervisor in a bank in North Carolina. And she had an extra week vacation a few years ago, and she came to visit with me. She stayed with me by herself. Yes,
the
kids were all right.
So you have contact. Even though they're far away, you do see one another.
And it's so if they have to come up this way, they'll stop past. I usually each year will go and spend a few days, maybe a week with each one.
Yeah. Where were you born?
I was born in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and that would have been, Beaver Falls would have been close to what?
Well, it's about,
city?
All right, New Brighton. It's about, I think that's the home of, who did they say came with it? Joe Namath or somebody from Beaver Falls, I believe. It's about 50 miles from Pittsburgh.
I see, okay.
Yeah, my parents had...
would that have been a rural area then?
I don't know, because I don't think so.
No, huh?
No.
Okay.
It's a twin city to New Brighton, Pennsylvania, Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania.
So let me ask you differently then. What are some of the earliest memories you have?
All right, this is interesting. We left there, the family left there when I was a year and a half and moved to New Jersey.
So obviously there are no memories of that particular time anyway.
Yeah, my parents...
Tell me about your mother and your mother's, about your, in other words, your maiden name and your mother's family history and what you know of it.
My mother was Ella Evans, and she was from Henderson, North Carolina. And her mother was Esther Evans. My mother was Ella Evans. And she was one of 8 children.
Big family.
And she was her father would teach them at home, a lot of them, Zachary Evans. And anyway, mother was the first one to go on to college in her family.
Wow.
And she went to college in Knoxville, Tennessee, where she met my father as a student. He was a student there from Alabama.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was from, well, you didn't ask me about him, but...
that was my next question.
All right, so it sort of blends together there, because this is how it began. They met as students there in Knoxville College in Knoxville, Tennessee. And mother, when they graduated, mother stayed and taught she went to North Carolina and taught for a year. My father went on to the seminary in Pennsylvania. And hence, this is how they eventually, I think we saw the letter where he wrote to her father asking her hand in marriage. And so when they were wed, they bought a home, started the family there in Pennsylvania. And my 2 older sisters were born there. And then I was the 3rd child. There were 4 girls.
But you moved from there when you were just a year and a half.
Yeah, a year and a half.
Where did you move to at that point?
Camden, New Jersey.
Okay. Okay. Let's come back to that in a minute, because I want to ask you about Camden. Today is a very different place.
Oh, definitely.
But your early memories, certainly of your mother and of your father, would be something that you could share with us.
Right. Well, mother and daddy were, we were very family oriented. And with I guess when we were, I forget how old, mother started substitute teaching, because at that time they didn't hire married teachers.
That's right.
That's right. So she subbed, and it was during the Depression years, so things were sort of, but I never thought about it. We were all just
Right.
Everybody got along fine. We had plenty to eat. They had a garden. They'd grow vegetables and what have you. And I didn't realize that it was such a thing as the Depression until I was older.
Right. It didn't impact your family as it did others.
No, it probably did. It did, hearing about it.
Sure,
things were
sure.
tight and what have you. But as a family, we children didn't.
Never felt deprived
it.
in any way.
No.
Right.
No, isn't that something?
It sure is.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet your grandparents? Did you know your grandparents?
I had the privilege of meeting my grandmother on my mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
My father's parents had died. I know he said his mother died in 1909, and I thought that was, oh my heavens, that's forever. When I was 10 years old, my mother let my sister Mary, who was 12, we took the train to North Carolina to visit with my grandmother, spent a month with her. And in the country. Now that was rural. That was something. That was an experience I'll never forget. And she would rent part of the property out for people would grow tobacco. It's the first time I saw tobacco, cotton. The cotton balls.
To let somebody else work the area.
Yes, because, her children were grown. I think there was an aunt that lived with her, my mother's younger sister.
Was your grandmother alone at that point? Was she married? Or
her husband, my grandfather died. My mother said, that was before I was born, my mother had the two children.
So she was a manager, as it were, then managing this property, managing like a farm.
And then she had her son-in-law and her daughter were living with her. My aunt Anita and her husband and children lived with grandmother.
It sounds to me like you have a family history of very strong women and very capable.
It seems so, right? I guess.
Independent women.
Yeah.
Wonderful heritage. That's great.
Yes.
What about your family now? What about siblings?
All right.
Your nuclear family.
All right. There are 4 girls, us. And it's very interesting because none of us really thought about teaching because Mother was a teacher and we would see all the work she had to do, the posters, the papers, marking. And they... and all of us ended up teaching.
Is that a fact?
Right. Everybody, because it was very difficult in those days, a lot of times to branch out into other fields. My older sister wanted to be a journalist. She did go to Japan during the war. She went as a second lieutenant to work with the government, setting up what is it? What do you call them? The entertainment for soldiers.
Yes.
What do they call those things?
Come on.
Whatever it is, arranging for.
I know, Kitty, and this is one of those moments when you get a gap, and
what
you can't grab it.
What do they call that? They call it not a senior moment. I heard something, intellectual overload.
All right, I like that.
Intellectual overload. And she went over there for 2 years. She wanted to go to Guam for a year. I think she and her fiance had a spat and she wanted to get away and she signed up for Guam. She had just finished college. And no, she had been finished, right. And she signed up and Guam was full. And they said Japan was the only other place that the vacancies were. And she'd have to sign up for 2 years. So they got married just before she went over. And so when she came back, she taught English in the Philadelphia high school, 11th grade English. She taught for years.
Now, that's the time, if I can digress for a moment here with you were living in Camden.
Yes, because we all went away to college. It's interesting. We all went back to the same college that Mother and Daddy met. We all went back to Knoxville College because that's all we used to hear growing up.
Oh boy.
It was like a natural thing to do.
Yes.
Elementary, junior high, high school, Knoxville
tradition.
College.
Wonderful.
So we went back with some of my parents' classmates' children.
Isn't that neat?
So Emma went back first, and then the next year Mary went. Then the following year I went, and then eventually after Emma came out, Mary. The youngest one, Miriam, she went there the year I graduated, because it was like 4 years between she and I. And but she only went there a year because she wanted to major in drama, and they did not have a drama major. So she transferred to West Virginia State College and finished from there. But they all, with languages, all teaching. My sister Mary and Miriam taught in the high schools in Philadelphia. They taught language. And what's interesting, each of them were able to go to Puerto Rico. They taught Spanish or English as a second language, so they were exchange teachers with Puerto Rico. The Puerto Rico sent a teacher to Philadelphia, and they went to Puerto Rico and taught for a year because they knew the language and were able to speak it well. So they both
got a wealth of experience in the process too. That's wonderful.
Yes.
You mentioned Camden. Camden tragically experienced a real decline after the war.
Definitely. Oh, it was like when I would go back to visit friends, or my father was still living at that time. It looked like a war zone.
Yes.
I mean, everything had gone. It was such a thriving, bustling town. Campbell's Soup Company.
That's right.
Because we
the
worked
shipyards
there.
were there, and
RCA Victor.
RCA Victor.
Yes, Estabrook Pen Company. The factories, the shipyards.
Well, I guess as the jobs disappeared, that's when the area declined.
Really?
And it really is sad.
Yes, and then the malls came, and they took, and this has ruined a lot of local business. Bayshore, all around the malls. I know even in Atlanta, in my travels, the main streets of towns are just almost deserted because your big malls have taken over. Yeah,
the memories that you hold of a time like that in your life, precious in that they can never be revisited because the world has changed so much since then. It's just... You were, which one in the birth order now?
Third.
You were third. So as a kind of a middle child, your experience was no doubt different from anybody else's. They say that sometimes.
Yeah, they say that in the third child.
Do you think it was for you? Did it have any impact on the person you are today, do you think?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, not at all. It did not. No,
because your brothers and sisters certainly were to some degree role models and had an influence on you.
Right, and we were always made to sister love, and of course you'd squabble and fight and what have you, natural. Always wanted a brother. We had no brothers, right? Because I thought my parents were very strict in a sense. With dating, you couldn't date till you were 18. And my daddy's motto, boys and books don't mix. So I always wanted to have a brother because maybe I could meet some. But then the girls that I went around, the group that I went around with, we were all sort of similar. No, but they were not. The parents were strict. I didn't go to a movie theater till I was 12. Then my parents selected the movies, and mother would go with us. Yeah, but then they took us.
You mentioned it was a very close family,
but they took us to different to the museums and to family picnics and to.
Was there any other adult other than your mother or your father that you really connected with, that had a strong influence on you early?
Family like. Because they were the only ones of their family there.
Okay.
So it was just them. Not really. Well, in school, in elementary school, because at that time the schools were segregated in Camden, New Jersey. Yes. The elementary schools. I think when we went to junior high school, they were integrated. But the elementary schools were, so our teachers
when did
strong.
You go to high school? At what point was it? Was that after the war now? This would have been?
Yes. Yeah. In high school,
okay. So the war...
No, during the...
Oh, it would have been during the war.
Yeah. 41, right? Because I graduated high school in 45.
Okay, yes, so that's during the war for sure.
Yes.
And the high school was integrated at that point?
Integrated, yes. Because, I in fact, in high school, I entered the public speaking contest. I won it. we went to elementary school from kindergarten through 8th grade. The junior high was from 7 to 9. However, they did not, we were colored at that time, did not go to, right, did not go to the junior high until 8th grade. We didn't go at 7th grade, or just went 9th grade. We spent 1 year at the junior high.
Have you any connections with some of the people that you went to school with back then? Do you maintain ties with them?
Oh, sure. They're in Camden. In fact, last weekend I was just there.
People are still living in Camden.
Yes, and they're building up my classmates. In fact, a couple of us went through college together. She and her husband are with a neighborhood improvement committee where they are working. It's a big thing. They had a big luncheon on one of my other girlfriends who works with that to improve and build up the neighborhood, and they're getting grants from.
I'm aware that there's an enormous amount of building.
Yes, building an opportunity to revitalize.
That's correct,
and have neighborhood awareness and so I was just there. They had a big their second annual luncheon last weekend, and it was very, very good.
Kitty, I wanted to ask you about your responsibilities as a youngster. Were you given certain chores that you had to do, or certain?
Oh, sure, right.
What would you have been responsible for?
Well, we took turns, washing and drying dishes, of course, and make up your own bed in the room. And I had to scrub the porch and scrub the kitchen, things like that.
Yes,
right.
okay.
But I would like to help my father when he would be mending something or nailing something. I would like to help.
That's good,
Yeah, I was daddy's girl.
Great. What was your first paying job?
First paying job, when it was, I've forgotten about that. Mrs. Katz lived across the street from us in one place that we lived. And I was a little girl I guess it's not mother's helper, to clean. I couldn't have been 12 years old. So I forget the name they would call it. I guess on Saturdays you'd go over, you would, scrub the kitchen floor or just little housework or something like that. Just a little girl, right? Okay. And that, I don't know how much I got. I can't remember that. But the first really big job was working at Campbell's Soup Company. Everybody worked at Campbell's Soup Company. Yeah. In the summertime, they had the tomato season. And they didn't care that you were going to go back to school because they only wanted you for the summer. What
was the job that you did at Campbell's?
Well, Campbell's Soup, I worked in the canning division where they made the cans. And my job was, as I would tell my kids, to put the lids, the bottoms on the cans. You'd feed them through this machine. The cans would come. They had the sheets of metal, and they would be shaped into cylinders and would come down through, and you would reach and put the lids, and they would go through and eventually sterilized and filled with food and all that bit. 55.5 cents an hour we made. And when the rush was really on, we worked from 7 in the morning till 7 at night 1 week. The next week from 7 at night till 7 in the morning.
And such repetitive work, too.
Such repetitive work. And this, I said, really would help one if you didn't want to go to college. You would say to yourself, boy, I can't do this. And you would be there with the regular people that worked all year. And you had to be 16 to start, so got your working papers. And I remember thinking and saying, some of my friends, my heavens, we left in September and went to school, and we come back, and I think they started in July hiring. These people were there all the time we were going to school, I said, and living. They were here doing that work. So with any...
what an effort to stay focused, too, because that could also be dangerous, that kind of work. That work on a line like that.
But they have it, the machines, and they have, I guess, somebody, they have it all managed. Sure. So that...
Do you... when you were growing up, was there one holiday that was really important to the family that you enjoyed celebrating, or you remember celebrations?
Well, I imagine, Christmas, of course. Sure. Everybody's birthday you were important on your birthday, and you could, my sisters and I, you could invite one friend over for dinner and what have you. And Mother would always because when she was going to college, they would, to help pay her way through, they would do, people from New Brunswick, New Jersey, people would go to these colleges in the South and get the girls to come and work the whole summer, sleep-in maids. So mother then had learned, so we would have 7-course meals at this special birthday or what have you. So we all knew what that was, from soup to nuts. First we'd have the
It's sort of a training course for all of you.
Yeah. And so we knew about, things like that. And it was really...
What were you interested in, Kitty, as a kid? What were your interests growing up?
As a kid...
Were you always interested in the theater and in drama?
I guess I used to recite. This was another thing. At the church programs or what have you, I remember I was 4 years old, everybody remembered, and I recited The Night Before Christmas.
Wow.
Of course, I couldn't, they had to teach it to me, and at church programs. So I was known for recitations, for reciting, and mother sometimes would put on little plays or something at church, or Three Wise Men, I remember. But that was, I think, most of our forte. My oldest sister and myself and my younger sister. Mary, the second one, she wasn't involved with it that much, but that was at school plays.
Yeah. So after school, you would be still carrying that interest home and probably working on...
Right. I remember saying I wanted to be the best dancer and singer in the world.
Yes.
Now that you mentioned this, I'd forgotten. Yes. We'd have little programs or something at home.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was a passion early on for you.
Yes. Now, and who would know that I'd be almost a middle-aged woman before I really... No, in college I did some.
So that was a dream deferred. That's all. It came.
I wanted to dance, but see, my father was a minister and quite strict, and no dancing.
Sure, that's true.
And now I belong to the senior steppers. We dance and put on shows, right?
You a morning person or a night person?
Night.
You are.
Yes.
Well, that fits with those interests of yours.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know how I came
survived to be a teacher all these years, getting up early in the morning.
Yeah.
Incidentally, how did you become directed toward education, that influence of that career choice? How'd that happen?
Well, it happened. It was one of those things, as I said, not too many other opportunities were open to people of color at that time. And Daddy always said, well, preaching and teaching, it could always be. Okay. And, so anyway, I wanted to be a medical doctor.
Is that right?
So I took a pre-med I don't know, I was just drawn to that, and I took a pre-med course in college. And mother always said, take education courses besides, because you never know what life will present to you. And so I applied at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School. So the summer before my senior year, they sent for me to come for an interview because I lived in Camden, and that was right across the Delaware River.
That's right, yes.
And that would be financially easier because I could just go, back and forth. And they sent for me for an interview, and had my credentials there. And the dean said, my grades were fine, and they had my college's medical facility courses were acceptable. Was in that book. I said, he'll never find Knoxville College, but he did. But he said they had never had a Negro. We were Negroes then. Woman student, female student there, a Negro. They gave first preference to alumni children or to people who gave them grants, and that I could not be accepted because of who I am. So he advised me to apply at New York University's medical school, but they just had not. They had a quota system. They had never had one Negro woman's right. Wow. So that was why I did not pursue them. My mother became ill my senior year in college, and when I got out of college, she still wanted me to pursue medicine, but she was teaching at the time, and she. My younger sister then had to go to college, and mother died that November that I got out of college, and at her deathbed she wanted, but I couldn't financially, we could not afford it with her, medical bills, and then sending my younger sister through college.
You mentioned her deathbed. What were you going to say about that? On her deathbed, she said, or
she had said, she was saying, Esther, I want you to go to medical school.
I see. Yeah. Oh boy.
But then she said, make sure Miriam gets through college. That's the younger one.
Okay.
So Daddy and Emma was in Japan. So we worked to help.
Choices have to be made, sure.
Help. That's right. To work to help send Miriam through school, help Daddy do that. So anyhow, I came to Long Island. Someone told me, a friend of mine, about this job at the Pilgrim State Hospital. She had worked at this summer. So that's what I came, and I'd send my money home.
Okay.
And I met my future husband, and I got married here. And then I decided to apply for teaching here in Long Island. And my father said, now you had all that, education, you should go on, stop working there at Pilgrim and go for teaching. So I went. I never was on Deer Park Avenue.
Excuse me, Kitty, but when you were working at Pilgrim, that was at a time when it was one of the largest hospitals in the world.
Yes.
It was, the population at that time was enormous. It was like a small city over there.
You're right. That's right.
And you what were you doing at Pilgrim at that time?
Psychiatric aid, working with the patients. And they found out that it was 3 of us that had gone from college there, that I was, my credentials, I was from college, so they would let me go on the transfer bus with them when they would go get patients from Bellevue, Kings County, and read them with the transfer agent, and I could read their papers or what have you, their histories, and worked with them. Right. That was an experience, and everything I have found in life, every job that I have done, being with people, it's an experience, and it's integrated into your life and into your dealing with other people.
It's a piece of the big picture.
That's
Every
right.
single piece
That's
fits.
right. And that was an experience I'm glad that I had. Working at Campbell's Soups was an experience.
Exactly, yes.
Right. For 6-7 summers I worked there at Campbell's Soup. Right. Wow. So meeting all kinds of people, meeting with people who are, mentally ill, and working with them and talking and dealing, and then with the doctors. Yeah.
Boy, people who often come to the classroom don't come with as much experience as you had already had in the world when you finally got here.
Right.
But I want to go back to some of your early educational experience. Do you remember the first day at school?
No, not my. What do you
Your
mean?
First day at school
as a little girl. Kindergarten. No, I don't.
Do you know what that? You were
But
talking about the school.
You know why I don't? I think it's because my sister Mary, the second one, when she would go to kindergarten, she would cry all the time. She was more sensitive. So they would send me to school with her just to keep her company. So in other words, I guess I had experienced kindergarten.
That's right. That was old hat to you.
So, right.
You've been there, done that.
And I remember not feeling, because Mary would cry, wouldn't stay, so Mother would let me go with her for a little while. Not all the time, but for a while. And then, so I imagine that's why it was sort of old hat, perhaps. It doesn't stand out in my memory, my first time going there.
From your first day, you had already been a role model to your younger.
To my older sister.
To your older sister.
Right.
Oh, my
goodness. The second one. Yeah, it was Emma.
Okay.
And then the second one.
The older one.
And then I wasn't in school yet. And I went with her a while.
To provide her with
some strength and support, right? Because she was more of the one that was.
Do you remember any of your early any of the teachers you had early on?
Definitely. Oh, yes. Mrs. Hutchinson was the kindergarten teacher. And I remember some of the kids, if they were bad, she'd put them behind this boy Bernard, behind the screen there for a while. And then I remember they tested, it was a few of us, 2 or 3 of us, the school tested us because they saw, I imagine, that we were able to do more work were accelerated. So I remember, now this is what stands out in my mind, going to first grade, because when I went to first grade, it was like they had already started that September. So halfway through the year, some of us were given a test. I guess it was halfway, and then we were, or a few months after, a couple months, and then we were sent to first grade. I guess accelerated, I imagine, and I remember walking into the classroom and sitting down, and it was also strange in seeing these charts on the board. Now, I learned later they were the vowels like A, E, I, O, U.
Yes.
And then and I didn't know what was going on. And I remember that. And this, of course, when I was started teaching children, I remember sometimes things can look so foreign to you. Yes. And it's really true. And I remember looking at the squirrel has ate the nut. I remember that. And I looked around at the kids. What is that? I didn't know it was phonics.
But what a great way to be able to identify with the students that you would later have to know where they are, what they're
how
experiencing,
they feel. That's
how they
right.
feel.
And I think that's one thing with my students, I would relate to them some of my experiences. Oh, yes, that I would tell them.
What were your least favorite subjects in school, though, Kitty?
My least, geography. In elementary school, I guess, geography, history.
Well, that's right. You were interested in science.
Science, math. I love science. I love literature. I liked literature. I liked eventually I liked ancient history, but modern day history I did not.
Before you made the transition from Pilgrim, then. As a psychiatric aide to the Brentwood School District, you had completed your graduate work at that point, or your undergraduate work?
No, my undergraduate. I had my bachelor's, right. I had my bachelor's. And then, I didn't know that I was going to go into
That's true,
teaching. And then, because I went to this second supervisory district, or wherever it was on Deer Park Avenue, to apply. And I don't remember who it was right now, the superintendent, I imagine, and he said that the communities were not ready for Negro teachers.
Wow, this is in what year now?
This was 50,
mid-50s,
something like that. The early 50s, because, and I remember then is when tears came to my eyes. Because University of Pennsylvania had told me that back in, and when I was just going to senior year in college, and it didn't bother me because as much then, because, this is the way things are, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But then coming to Long Island, and when he told me that most of our communities are not ready for Negro teachers, that's when the tears came. My God, is this still going on? Yeah. And, so eventually, I applied for substitute teaching, and
this is before you had completed your graduate work now, or
my graduate work.
Did you go after you had your bachelor's?
Then this is before I got my master's. Right. Oh yeah, this was before I got my master's. Okay. And because at that time it was not required.
Where did you do your graduate work?
My graduate work, NYU and Hofstra.
I see. Okay.
I matriculated at Hofstra finally because I first went there after I was hired from Brentwood. After I came to substitute, and then eventually I got into after 2 or 3 months, they offered me a contract. So because I had to take enough education courses to be certified for education, because my field was medicine and science. Right. And so then I went to Columbia.
Oh boy! So you were...
Columbia, right, and NYU. And then when I took courses, for certification, then when I decided to matriculate, I was in supervision here. So I matriculated for my master's in ed administration because I was in supervision.
You heard about the openings in Brentwood when you went to that on the Deer. You mentioned the Deer Park.
Well, I started subbing. I put my names in at Wyandanch schools, Babylon, Bayshore, Brentwood. So whoever called me, I went. So then Brentwood started calling me a lot. And once I came here,
who interviewed you, Kitty?
Dr. Hoyt was the
Okay,
one.
he did.
Yes, yes, Dr. Hoyt. And
do you remember any of the questions from that interview? Anything?
No.
Okay.
No, that doesn't stand out in my
Okay.
mind.
What was your first impression of Brentwood when you, during the interview, after the interview, taking a look around? Certainly you'd been in Pilgrim, so you knew something about the area.
Right. It was certainly a small district then. There was only 5 elementary schools.
The R.O.B.S building was here.
Yes, the R.O.B.S building was here. The village school.
Yes.
And the ad building was there.
The R.O.B.S building must have been relatively new at that point.
Yeah.
Because Brentwood had not had a high school too many years before that.
Who was it? I think it was only 1 or 2 junior
highs. It was Bayshore before was the high school.
Yes.
So,
see, and I wasn't that, because I lived away, not away, but
you're not that aware of what
went around here. And but I know that it was just beginning to develop. And I have seen it grow from 5 elementary schools. Southwest was just 1-storied building at that time. That's where I first started. And I remember saying, with all the building that was going on, the communities, and I said, after a while, they're going to have an elementary school for each community.
Yes. Oh, there was an enormous. That was when Brentwood was in the boom.
Yes. Oh, yes. They were really looking for teachers. They were really searching, because I had not sent my credentials in, and they hired me, and then they came along. You know, I knew I had them, and then from the college and what have you, they were really looking for teachers.
The developments were sprouting up like mushrooms.
Yes, and what I said came to be true.
Yes.
I said there's going to be an elementary school in each development, and then they started building up. On the schools, because it grew. And
you started at
Southwest.
And what did you teach that first?
3rd grade. 3rd grade. Yes, I think it was Mr. Walters was the principal, and then.
So you taught all subjects in the 3rd grade.
All subjects. Yes, and then Mr. Brieger, before he was Dr. Brieger.
Art Brieger.
Art Brieger, he came there, and.
Was he, when you say he came there as a principal?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because I had subbed at other schools, because I had met Ralph Sakin over at North School. I had subbed there at all the different schools in Brentwood. A lot of them I had subbed. And,
I was going to ask you who were some of the people you worked for that you remember.
And at Southeast, I could see him, and I can't call his name. Do you know?
I'm not sure who it was.
Okay, right. And then eventually, I think Mr. Graff was at Village.
Yeah.
No. I can't remember.
But you knew him anyway. You worked with him.
Well, Mr. Graff became my principal. Yes.
Oh, he became your principal.
Oh, yes, for years. Right. Oh, yes, indeed. Really. And in fact, I think we retired the same year. In 89. Right.
Some good memories from those early years? Anything stand out?
It was just great. I remember I didn't know how to use a ditto machine.
Oh, sure. None of us did. None of us did.
And Dottie Zuckerman was my grade chairman.
Yeah, you had mentioned she was a chairman.
Yes, she was my grade chairman. And we'd have like grade meetings. They lived in an apartment, she and Jack. And I remember we'd go to their apartment and had a couple of meetings.
Department meeting or a grade meeting?
Grade meeting.
Yes.
Go to their apartment, right. And they didn't have any children then, because she said her mother-in-law would keep asking, anything new? So what's new? So what's new? And yes, we go back a long time.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, indeed. Wonderful. And so eventually, I don't know how I came to be, with the register committee, we had registers at that time.
Oh, yes.
And then
were you active in other things too in school? Did you, besides the classroom teaching? I know teachers never have time for anything. The hours are very long.
Yeah.
And yet there was always a request. I don't know about at the elementary level, but at the high school level, there was always an invitation. You encouraged to participate in other activities, to be a sponsor of this club or that club. Did you have that?
We didn't have those clubs per se in elementary school.
You just had preparation.
Yes, but I don't think we had gym teachers. Did we have to take the kids to gym ourselves? I know we didn't have a library at the beginning, and I taught Right. Elementary school, third grade for about 6.5 years. And then the intern program came along when we worked with
what was that?
That was Brentwood worked in conjunction with Adelphi Suffolk College with their student seniors who were going to be teachers.
Oh, I see.
And they would come and teach half of their senior year, I believe, as interns.
Was Fred Weaver involved with that program
I
at some
remember
point?
Fred Weaver. Was he? He might have been.
I think he mentioned to me that he was involved. But at any rate, I don't want to take you away from what you were saying.
No, but that is how Mr. Graff, I think, asked me or someone for me to go and be interviewed for being a clinic teacher at the intern program. Because I was just getting ready to ask to leave third grade and go to another grade because I'd been there 6.5 years. So I wanted to move on maybe to fourth grade.
Yes.
So I was interviewed. So these teachers, these interns were paid, I think, half salary, I believe. They had to stay, in the class. They had to work there in the classroom. And I was sort of like a master teacher, clinic teacher, would be with them. First, I had to be relieved from my classroom. Oh. And one of the interns, I forget the young lady's name, she came and for 2 weeks, every day was there with me, and then was supposed to gradually take over the running of the class so that I could leave. I had about 5 other interns in schools that I would visit, spend a whole day with them and consult with them, have workshops, seminars at Adelphi Suffolk. But this young lady got cold feet. And she couldn't do it. So they sent another intern, Irene Brown, who taught in Brentwood for years and became a very dear friend of mine and still is today. She came to my class. The other young lady dropped out. Yeah. So Irene was only there 2 or 3 days, and she came and said, can I help with a reading group? And see, she came, her mother and father were both teachers. So I guess she had that feeling of confidence.
Yes.
And so in 2 weeks, I was able to leave her and visit the others. I'd spend a whole day, come back and spend a whole day with each intern and then discuss with them and help them. And then we'd meet with the college with Dr. Mattei. Do you remember that name?
Don't
he
remember
was
the
with
name.
Adelphi Suffolk, but in charge, the director of that intern program.
I see, yes.
And they'd go back to the college and so.
Do you, it may or may not be related, but you just mentioned, do you have contact or maintain contact with any of your former students?
Former students? No.
Okay. No. At the elementary level, I guess what I'm recognizing is that it's different at the high school level than it would be at the elementary level.
Yes.
Because there's a closer in proximity, I guess, to age.
That's right. Right. I've met some of them after.
Later. Yes.
In the stores, or one young lady came back as a teacher here in that I had taught. Yeah, that's true, because they leave us and they go on to junior high school.
Well, let me ask you a related question then. Did you maintain contact with any of your teachers, either at college or at high school? Or?
Well, in a way, let's see. When I went back out of college, I subbed there at home for a while, did substitute teaching. And I remember Mrs. Kennedy, who I used to be afraid of, the art teacher, because she was very strict. And I was at the junior high school subbing, and she was transferred over there teaching. Now they had black teachers to come over to the high school. I went down to meet her and I said, Mrs. Kennedy, I'm still afraid of you. And she laughed.
Yes.
A lot of the teachers, yes, Mrs. Burns, because I worked with them when I was in high school with the NAACP Youth Council. I was very active, and in fact, I wrote to her and she was honored. And I have a letter I saved. She has since died, but I have a letter that she wrote to me. Oh, heavens. She was about 90 years old.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
And yes.
Wonderful.
And yeah.
That's an important, it's difficult to explain, but those kinds of mementos are very important.
Yes, I have that, yes.
And special. Kitty, you mentioned the early days arriving at Brentwood. This was before there was even a BTA. I think this was
right
early on. There was no. There might have been an organization, but there was no union. Certainly, NYSUT wasn't a part of our experience.
Right. We started with BTA, and I was just looking through some of my things, and it was at a point where BTA and they merged. So we had here, because Jack Zuckerman was president, and then I was very active.
You were active. I was going to ask you that.
I was active, yeah, because I have some letters I saw last night where I became president of BEA, Brentwood Educators Association, because we were 5-way merged. That's right. It was NYSUT, NEA, AF.
We have to have the retirees archivist take a look at some of the stuff that you have.
I have, yes, the little papers that I sent out, because I was a delegate.
Okay.
My first convention was in Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
Yes, I think it was Jack and the rest of them. We were delegates out there. Portland, my first plane flight, for heaven's sake.
Oh, yes, yes.
Right.
That's ironic,
yes,
for
it's
sure.
very active. And then the union, because I was looking
That would have been in the
midterms.
60s, right? Sure.
70. 72 or 73 was when I went my first flight to Portland, Oregon, right, as a delegate for Brentwood.
Were there times in your career when you found that you were more active with the organization than at other times, or were you consistently active?
Well, consistently once I began.
Okay.
Consistently from on. And then it happened that I was, when BTA, when NYSUT and NEA split, then I continued on with NEA.
Okay.
Right. And but here again, they're going to merge again. But and then
well,
BTA,
they're talking about it.
Yes. So I was very active with that. In fact, I was a charter member of the New York State New York Educators Association, one of the charter members. And looking back on my life, I've been charter member for quite a few things. Setting it up, setting it, working along with getting things up off the ground. Yes.
You've known a lot of people that have been very active along with you. Or some of the people who were, of course, Dottie has been, and Dottie and Jack have been very active. That have I guess we've watched ourselves, all of us, grow as professionals in terms of our involvement with first BTA and then now with R.O.B.S.
Are you with R.O.B.S?
Yes.
Too?
Yes. Now, there are so many things that come to mind that I want to ask, and I don't want our time to go without getting to some of them. So forgive me if I bounce around a little bit, Kitty.
I'll bounce along.
You ultimately decided at some point that it was enough, that you were ready to retire, that you were ready to let go. What prompted you to come to that point?
You know, I don't know, because I know you could retire at age 55, I think, or 20 years, but I was nowhere near ready at age 55 to retire. And I think I would see a lot of my friend teachers that I knew retiring, because we were like family there at the school. And but I still was not ready. I think the year they said you'll know when you're ready. I can't pinpoint it to any particular thing. I guess after a while, I don't know. It's not that the children were any different or anything like that. I guess just after 32 years, I just figured, it was time to, my children were grown and gone. And it was just, I guess, just time to go.
When you look back over your career in education, what is something that has given you the most professional pride?
I was thinking about something along that line, but I can't pick out any one thing because it was a progression. I enjoyed the intern program. Then I was a general instructional supervisor.
I see.
For 4 years. I was very active on all district committees. I worked with Joan Lang on the curriculum, district curriculum committee. I was director of the home tutorial program,
Oh, I see.
where we had with Jack Finan, the
Yes.
federal program, we had a summer tutorial program where we hired college students to come and go to the homes to tutor, and I directed and supervised that program.
Wow.
And and we hired college kids, and we tried to hire kids from the community if we could. And then we'd go on field trips during the once a week. Then we had parent workshops. And then in the winter, then we had a bookmobile. We started that. I started that when we worked with the Brentwood Library. The college kids that I had, I don't know how we got this bus. Somebody donated or loaned us a old school bus, and they took the seats out. We built shelves, and we had a route. I was looking through all these things that I'd saved. And we encouraged the parents and the children to get books. We had our regular route, and I had my bookmobile librarians.
Was this affiliated with the public library, or was it the school district?
Brentwood Public Library.
Public
yes,
library.
the public library.
Whoa,
and
boy.
with the Brentwood Neighborhood Opportunity Center is with the home tutorial program.
Wonderful.
And they had kids coming from the college over there. They had to provide transportation to tutor their kids at home to help them. And then someone in the community said, well, these are Brentwood Schools children, so Brentwood should be involved with transportation for these college kids. So when Brentwood became involved, then they said, well, we have to then have someone to direct it. And that's how I got in with it.
Well, you certainly have been at the helm of a lot of projects.
So this is why I'm saying I enjoyed, all of it. And I imagine it was just, I did the book mode. We took the kids. I've done so many things.
Kitty, you each one of these, quote, jobs had a different definition, different description. But how did you define your own purpose?
My own purpose?
In the class or in your capacity as an educator, what was your primary purpose?
Well, of course, it's the same, to educate the children, but to help children, I think, realize that they could do, to give them confidence, because this is what I think is so very important, and to help them enjoy learning.
Okay.
Because I would tell them I had this, this is why I hated geography, because this teacher was so boring. And once you have something to make it interesting, to have them involved, that they could all be able to do things. I remember this one little boy was telling an argument with the kids, and he says, they called him dumb. He says, no, I'm not, because Miss Hayes said I could do whatever it is I want to do. So to build up confidence, I love children, and I believe that all.
What was your last building assignment, the last place that you worked?
Fifth grade.
Okay.
Oh, fifth grade. Yes, I taught fifth grade.
At what building?
At Hemlock Park.
At Hemlock Park.
Hemlock Park with Mr. Graff and all my dear friends. We're still, a lot of us keep friends. It's like a big family. Yes. And
how many years were you in public education then? From
32.
32 years.
And here in Brentwood.
Did you ever have time during that tenure to do any other jobs? Some people had second jobs.
No, I took a half-year sabbatical.
You did?
They gave me a half-year sabbatical that I finished getting my master's, I think, here at that time. And then I took extra.
Do you remember what your first annual salary was when you began?
Yes, I do. I tell people it's hard to believe. $4,200. $4,200.
Before taxes.
Yeah, and listen, I didn't know that we got that big check in June. That was like a gift that first year. I was surprised. $4,200, right? And that was something. And I ended up, with my master's plus 45 or almost 50, right?
What have you been doing since you retired? This is a
then,
whole other world, isn't it?
Yes, I have been doing theater. I have been with Senior America. I was chosen Miss Senior New York for 1994, and I was a finalist in Miss Senior America in Reno. I have done theater with the Gray Wig at Hofstra University. We put on shows for seniors. I do open stage theater for children.
Oh, gosh.
In fact, I just had a show yesterday in Smithtown and the day before in East Setauket, and where we do, and the fact that Brentwood had us here, I performed at school. I play with Daughters of the Revolution, so I'm
You're very active. Very busy.
And the years,
Was there anything that you would like to have accomplished, Kitty, that you couldn't accomplish while you were teaching? While you were in education? While
I was in education, no. I just did, as you can see, I did so much. When I think about it, all the things, and I enjoyed it. And I was a consultant for Head Start, for Brentwood, and I was always...
You know what's going to happen? As soon as we leave here, we're both going to remember so many things that we wanted to talk about. Because you strike me as that kind of person that has a very full life.
Oh, yeah.
A very rich and a very full life.
Yeah, and my sons, I'm very happy. My oldest son, when he finished, I think he subbed in Brentwood for about two or three times, and he said no, teaching was not for him. So he's...
Is there a piece of advice that, as we finish up here, is there a piece of advice that you might want to extend to any young teachers that might at some point see this, by way of your years of experience, that you could offer to somebody beginning a career?
Beginning a career, just take each day as a new day, and I guess I could say to them, and just keep yourself involved, busy, giving experiences to the children, and they have to love it, imparting to the kids, your children, who are youth that we are molding and shaping for the future. And it's just, and I'm sure if they go into teaching, there has to be a love for them to start it even.
You obviously bring your passion to whatever it is that you do. You can see it, and I want to thank you for giving us this time and the opportunity just to go back through the years and remember all of these wonderful experiences that have helped make Brentwood.
Yes, I couldn't cut the umbilical cord. When I left, I went back to the school for a year and a half.
Look at me.
Yeah, I couldn't, because it was like Brentwood.
It's a two-way street. There is there's a lot of give, but there's also a great deal of take with this. Thank you so much, Kitty.
Well, thank you. This has been wonderful. Okay.